Ma, my name is John, and I'm an ordinary guy from Boston. I work as a sales manager at one of the big IT companies. Nothing special, just office routines, endless reports and meetings, plans and budgets. But at least with a steady income and benefits package. The only thing that really brightens my life are the memories of my past relationship with my ex-wife, Jessica. When I met her, I was 25, and she seemed like the perfect partner. Jessica worked as an administrator at one of the city bars back then. A tall, slim blonde with fathomless blue eyes and an astounding figure. When she first smiled at me, I was simply smitten. Our relationship progressed rapidly. A whirlwind romance, a sea of passion and intimate closeness. Jessica was truly an insatiable partner, desiring maximum sensuality and ardor. I remember how she loved when I gave her special caresses, demanding to prolong those sweet moments. And she would respond in kind, skillfully indulging me with her tender hands. We were constantly traveling, going on dates, seeking amusement. It seemed our happiness would never end. In the evenings, we would indulge in intimacy without restraint. In the kitchen, in the bathroom, right in my car. I never thought I would one day marry this uninhibited femme fatale. But to everyone's surprise, after 3 years of dating, I did propose to Jessica. She accepted it with tears of joy in her eyes. Our wedding was grand, a lavish celebration at a luxurious hotel right in the heart of Boston. I felt like the happiest man in the world. The first year of married life flew by like a single day. Trips to Hawaii and the Bahamas, endless parties and romantic dinners at exquisite little restaurants, and fiery nights of love in the marriage bed. Jessica remained just as hot a number as before the wedding. Her appetite simply amazed me. She wanted intimacy everywhere and at every opportunity. I could barely keep up with her. So for a long time, I was completely happy and content with the marriage. What more could a successful young man dream of? A hot, wanton wife, a great job with prospects for career growth. Life seemed to have turned out wonderfully. Alas, that blissful period became the peak of my marital happiness, because very soon, the situation began to rapidly deteriorate. The first warning bells rang about a year after the wedding. Jessica suddenly started staying late at work. She said the boss had piled on a lot of tasks. At first, I didn't think much of it, since something like that had happened before. But this time, the delays became the chronic norm. Jessica would stay at the office, while I sat at home waiting for her for hours. When she finally did show up, she looked exhausted and completely drained. My tentative attempts to kiss or hug her were met with a detached gaze and pushing my hands away. "I'm not in the mood today, John. Leave me alone, please." Such remarks left me baffled. After all, Jessica used to be unable to go a single day without intimate pleasures, and now she barely allowed me to touch her. In the bedroom, everything became really bad. If before, we would often be intimate 3 or 4 times a night, now I had to beg her even once every couple of weeks. And arousing Jessica's desire became increasingly difficult. I would have to expend tremendous effort with special caresses for an hour or more before she would become responsive and ready to share intimacy with me. Her former passion was gone without a trace. From then on, a gloomy atmosphere and musty chill awaited me at home. Jessica was constantly glued to her phone or a book, as if I didn't exist. My attempts to talk to her or get her attention were met with extreme irritation. Meanwhile, all the household chores fell to me. I had to clean, cook, do laundry, and so on. And yet my efforts never measured up. The food was too salty, the laundry wasn't clean enough, the apartment wasn't tidy enough, endless nitpicking and complaints. And in response to my grievances, Jessica would snap that I should appreciate her caring about her job at all. Oh, and she made sure to shame me for my salary being several times higher than hers. In general, the former passionate and amorous Jessica had evaporated. Instead, an emotionally deaf woman with an icy heart of indifference had taken up residence in our home. It wounded me terribly, but I stubbornly tried to restore our once warm relationship. For the first couple of years, I still hoped that everything would change if I just showed a little patience and effort. I gave Jessica romantic gifts, took her to restaurants, surprised her with trips, all to no avail. Jessica accepted my gestures of attention with lazy indifference, and sometimes even with undisguised irritation, as if to say, "Don't bother me with all this, I'm tired." Once she even grew weary of my surprises. After I presented her with a handcrafted jewelry bracelet, she waved it away as if it were nothing. "What's this again?" "John, when was the last time you listened to what I said? I hate bracelets, don't you remember? They don't suit me." In moments like those, I felt like turning away, to see the wife I'd once adored cynically trample all over my attempts to please her. Arguments between us flared up more and more frequently. "Just stop fussing with your gifts," Jessica would shout, pressing her temples with her fingers. "Think about how to fix our normal relationship instead, you idiot!" After such shakeups, I felt drained and shattered. Jessica was right. All these little bouquets and trinkets were just attempts to mask the real problems in our marriage. The problem of her indifference, the problem of lack of intimacy, the problem of her inattention to me and my needs. I just didn't understand what my wife really wanted and how to save our relationship. After a couple of years of fruitless efforts, I risked making an appointment with a marriage counselor. Perhaps a specialist could help us figure out where we had gone wrong. Jessica reluctantly agreed to attend a few sessions. In the counselor's office, she remained polite but detached. I told her how much I missed the tenderness and passion in our relationship, how I wanted to bring back everything that had once bonded us. The specialist advised us to resume romantic dates, get out more often, take up a joint hobby, and also to be completely honest with each other and listen to each other's needs. After several therapy sessions, it did seem to me that Jessica had thawed out a bit. A glimmer of her former fire flickered in her gaze, and we were intimate more often than once a month. But at home, away from the counselor, the situation remained the same. Jessica would rush off to work, giving me a cursory kiss goodbye. In the evenings, she would nod absent-mindedly as I told her my stories. After so many years of marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. However, the specialist continued to urge me not to give up and keep making efforts. The main thing was to be patient and meet my partner's desires. She said trust would return if we could just hold on. Over the next few months, I stubbornly followed the counselor's advice, although a sense of hopelessness was chilling my soul. And then, a new calamity befell me: health problems. It started with a strange weakness and loss of energy. And a couple of weeks later, bouts of searing lower back pain kicked in. They would strike suddenly, and I would just collapse to the floor as a wave of excruciating cramps spread through my body. During one of those flare-ups, Jessica called an ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital. The doctors racked their brains over the cause of my sudden ailment for a long time before diagnosing a herniated disc. I was facing a complicated surgery to remove the herniation. I had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks while recovering from the surgical procedure. And during all that time, Jessica didn't visit me once. Not a note, not a call, not even a bouquet of flowers. As if we were complete strangers, as if her husband didn't exist at all. This utter ingratitude was the last straw for my patience. When I was discharged and returned home, having mustered the last of my strength, I was simply robbed of the gift of speech. The apartment was in utter disarray. Empty bottles, cigarette butts, and dirty dishes were strewn everywhere. Dust and dirty laundry carpeted the floor. It gave the impression that no one had cleaned here for weeks. And then I discovered a business envelope on the kitchen table. Opening it, I shook out photographs that made my heart clench with agonizing pain. The photos were of Jessica with some unfamiliar young man. In some, they sat on a park bench, locked in passionate kisses. In others, he was methodically undressing her. The subsequent shots were even more revealing, their intimate closeness captured in graphic detail. At that moment, a painfully familiar voice sounded behind me. "John, this isn't what it—" Turning around slowly, I saw Jessica, as cold and indifferent as ever, with a stony face. She was holding another bottle of wine in her hands. "So you were cheating on me?" I hissed through clenched teeth. "While I was writhing in pain in the hospital, you were out whoring around—" "Don't you dare tell me what to do!" Jessica cut me off with a frown. "I was going to have to tell you anyway." After her next words, I was simply dumbfounded. It turned out her affair had been going on for over 6 months. All that time, while I'd been trying to fix our marriage, my wife had been carrying on an affair on the side. "So why didn't you just divorce me right away?" I growled, suppressing bitter tears of hurt. "Why did you have to string me along, give me hope?" "Well, You remember how much money you have, don't you? Jessica coyly shrugged her shoulders. The apartment, the car, the vacations, all thanks to you. How could I just give up such a cushy life, depriving myself of all those benefits? Her cynical words made me tremble with rage. So that was her calculation, to cheat on me on the side, but continue to enjoy all the benefits I provided her. You vile, hypocritical bitch, I snarled, barely restraining myself from pouncing on her with my fists. How could you do this? Betray me, mock me when I was on my deathbed. Jessica silently watched my outburst of anger with an almost amused look on her face, as if she didn't care about my anguish and suffering at all. Oh, come on, John, don't take it so hard, she saluted me with the wine bottle. At least now you're free to do whatever you want, right? Maybe you'll even get yourself a mistress. Who knows? I was ready to lunge at her and smash that cursed bottle against her arrogant face. But instead, I abruptly turned and stormed out of the apartment, forgetting to even take my things. That night, I roamed the city like a madman. My head was filled only with thoughts of Jessica, the vile wretch who had betrayed me at the first opportunity, about the 10 years of my life wasted on her, how much effort and care I had invested in our relationship. And this was my payback. Her utter indifference, her cynical betrayal, and her cold calculation in deciding to keep me around for my money for a while longer. Not every man can endure such an insult. The only consolation at that moment was that at least she had come clean with me. Otherwise, I might never have learned the shocking truth about this sham of a marriage. Perhaps I would have gone on clinging to the pitiful crumbs of her attention. And where would that have led? Years of fruitless efforts and self-destruction. Jessica's timely betrayal may have shattered my heart, but it also untied my hands for a new life. The next morning, I returned home and gathered all my essentials. Jessica wasn't there at that point. It seemed she had spent the night at her lover's place, which was for the best. I hurriedly packed my belongings, important documents, my laptop. I was faced with a choice: to stay in the apartment and share the living space with Jessica, or take my things and move into a rental. After some thought, I chose the second option. I couldn't bear to remain under the same roof as my unfaithful wife. Every nook and cranny of this place reminded me of her betrayal, of how she had been intimate with another man behind my back. No, I couldn't live here anymore. Too many bitter and foul memories. Taking my share of our joint savings, I set out to find new accommodations somewhere on the outskirts. I hired a lawyer to expedite the divorce proceedings as quickly as possible. I have to say, there were no problems with that. Jessica herself didn't object and didn't even show up for the court hearings. About 2 months after her infidelity came to light, I was officially single again. My ex-wife promptly moved in with her young lover, leaving me the apartment. At first, it was very difficult. The pain of betrayal, the emptiness of shattered hopes, the feeling of utter loneliness. It's not easy to cope with that when you've just been released from the shackles of a long-term commitment. But over time, the situation did improve. I finally realized what a blessing Jessica's betrayal had been, trading family for a fleeting affair. Free from the burden of family obligations, I could devote myself fully to work and personal pursuits. With fewer expenses, life seemed much easier and more carefree. For a while, I even experimented with various ways to obtain sensual pleasure. I tried different avenues for kindling and satisfying carnal desires. In a sense, I was compensating myself for all those years when Jessica had denied me intimacy. However, I quickly realized that wasn't for me either. Much more important was the feeling of freedom to do as I pleased with my time, without owing anyone an account. Not one of the new women I met could entirely ensnare me. Instead, I soon found my old good friends again, whom I had completely lost sight of during my marriage. Getting together with them for raucous parties and bar hangouts became a new joy. A year after the divorce, I look back on the past with a smile. Yes, it was bitter to realize how long I had been blind, failing to notice how Jessica had systematically been destroying our marriage. But that's all behind me now. These days, I savor every minute of my liberated bachelor life. Joy and hope live in my heart once more. Who knows? Maybe the one and only is waiting for me somewhere out there, ready to bring back the feeling of boundless happiness. But even if not, I'm quite content with the current state of affairs. I remember my former meek, submissive self all too well to ever step into those traps again. My wife's betrayal taught me not to fear change and to always stand up for my own interests. In this new real life, I am the master of my own happiness. And if my former unfaithful Jessica ever does come to mind, it's only as a living reminder. Never again will I allow myself to be treated that way. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.